Hi, this is Nicholas Yock, a registered migration agent from Pathway to Oz. In this video today, I'm going to discuss the eligibility requirements and process of applying for Queensland State Migration or Queensland State Nomination. So we will be discussing, the process, eligibility requirements, recent trends, and everything like that. You would apply for state migration or state nomination if you're looking to apply for the skilled regional visa, the 491, or the state nominated visa, or the skilled nominated visa, the 190. So both these visas are in the general skilled migration stream and lead to permanent residency. So each state in Australia has its own specific lists of occupations that they want people to migrate there with. So this is separate from the government's list, the STSOL or the MLTSSL, and these occupations on the Queensland list have been identified by Queensland as in demand in that particular state. So some of the requirements for the state nominated visa or the skilled regional visa, the 190 or the 491, are that you're under 45 years of age, you hold a full skills assessment, and you can obviously pass the English test requirements. In addition to this, you also need to pass the Queensland State Migration requirements. So firstly, you need to have an occupation which is on the Queensland state list. So if you go to their website, you can see the different lists that they have and they'll have different jobs and if they're available for the 491 visa or for the 190 visa. In addition to this, they'll also have different streams of nomination. So if you are living and working in Queensland is one of the streams, and one of the requirements for that is obviously the job is on the list. And two, if you're applying for a 190 visa, you need to have worked for at least 6 months in the occupation in Queensland. If you're applying for a 491 visa, you need to have worked for at least 3 months in the occupation in Queensland. In addition to this, you'd want to have an employer who's willing to provide you with ongoing employment for 12 months. So it's not sponsorship, they don't really have to do much, they just need to say, yes, we're willing to continue to employ this person in the future for the next 12 months. There's also an offshore list where the requirements are a lot lower. Obviously for offshore, you don't necessarily need to have a job offer, but you do need to have additional work experience requirements. Once again, if you do look at the state lists as well, certain occupations may also have additional eligibility requirements. All right, so what's the process of applying for Queensland State Migration? Okay, so firstly, obviously you need that full skills assessment. Once you've got the full skills assessment and you've had a read through the other requirements, you would lodge your expression of interest online through Skills Select. So on this expression of interest, it measures things like your age, education, work experience, English ability, etc. But on there, it also asks, would you be willing to migrate to a particular state? If you want to go to Queensland, you would select yes. It also asks, would you be willing to live and work in a regional area? And if you're looking to apply for the 491 visa, you would select yes on that. Once you've submitted the expression of interest, you then just need to sit on your hands and wait for Queensland State Migration to give you an invitation to apply for the nomination. Please note, there's no specific queue and there's no specific waiting list. If Queensland Migration like your application or your expression of interest, they'll give you an invite. The number of people who submit an expression of interest and want Queensland State Migration is a lot less than the number of people who apply for it, so there's no guarantee you'd receive that invitation. Once you do receive an invitation from Queensland State Migration, you'll then have about 14 days to provide them with whatever documentation they request. Usually it would be things like copies of your passport, English documents, work experience documentation, skill assessments, evidence of funds, that sort of stuff. Once you provide this to Queensland, they'll usually give you, well, fingers crossed, they'll give you the nomination, in which case, once you receive the nomination, you would then be invited to apply for the state nominated 190 or the skilled regional 491 visa through your IMI account. So how does Queensland select the applicants? Look, firstly, just because you meet the requirements of Queensland State Migration, it doesn't guarantee you'll receive an invitation. A lot more people apply for Queensland State Migration than are issued invitations. Generally speaking, you'd think that Queensland would select people with the highest points, English ability, skilled employment, but it's up to Queensland State Migration. They don't necessarily have to. So they could select people for certain jobs which they've identified as incredibly in demand in the state, They might put more preference on things like if you're working there, your ties to the community, etc. I mean, one of the best things about state migration is that you don't need as many points as the skilled independent 189 visa. So Queensland can focus specifically on what is in demand for that state. So if, for example, they are in desperate demand for electricians, for example, they might give an electrician an invitation if they've only got the very minimum of 65 points, as opposed to an accountant who might have 90 points, or whatever occupation might have a lot more points. They'll give it to the occupation which is in demand. So some recent trends we've noticed for Queensland state migration is that the 190 visa, it's currently closed, and it'll open again in the future, but when state nomination opens for Queensland, they'll only open it for a couple of days, then they'll accept all the expressions of interest through that period and look at those, and then they'll close it a couple of days later, as opposed to normal sort of state migration programs in other states where it's open year round. For the 190 visa, Queensland only has very specific times, and they don't advertise when it's going to be. They'll just say, we're open, and you've got 2 days to submit that expression of interest. The 491 visa, thankfully, in Queensland has been sort of open, year round, or it appears like it's doing that. Obviously as well, state migration has become a lot more popular, with the skilled independent visa not becoming as prevalent as before. So it's always a good idea to obviously have as many points as possible, and obviously apply for as early as possible if you are in Australia, to give yourself the best chance of receiving a nomination. So look, Queensland state migration, I can understand that it's a bit confusing, or just the visa process in general. If you would like to talk with a registered migration agent about your prospects or migration pathway, feel free to contact Pathway to Oz, and we'll go from there. Thank you.